Time now for the week that was. Let's take a look at the top stories that made headlines around the globe this week. Dozens of persons were killed this week and almost 100 others injured following what the Nigerian army described as an accidental airstrike on a community in Kaduna State. An eyewitness told Arise News correspondent Nisi Gabriel that the dead included women and children.
The Accident and Emergency Unit of the Barau Diko Teaching Hospital in Kaduna is filled with victims of the accidental airstrike carried out by the Nigerian army. They are in dire pain and anguish as doctors scamper around to resuscitate them, while relatives are scattered around the hospital precinct with gloomy faces. A family member of one of the victims tells Arise News outside the hospital premises that tens of people died on the spot, with many villagers estimating it at over 50 persons killed. According to him, 2 blasts rocked the gathering on Sunday night. The first strike killed more women and children, while the second claimed the lives of those who went to rescue injured victims.
Over 85 persons died. We brought 66 injured persons to this hospital. More children were among those killed. From what we gathered, more children and youths died. The youths that went to rescue injured victims were killed in the second blast. We are calling on the government to come to their rescue because most of the victims are poor, especially with the current hardship. They don't have what it takes to take care of themselves, not to talk of footing their medical bills.
The Deputy Chief Medical Director of the Barau Diko Specialist Hospital says 66 injured individuals were brought in by relatives with various degrees of injuries and that several of them are under severe conditions.
After the unfortunate incidents, a total number of 66 patients were brought to us, to this hospital, with varied degrees of injuries. Right? Some are very severe, while some are mild and could be treated on outpatient and then they can go. We are still assessing them. Some are already in the theater. We are going to assess the extent of injuries. Right? Some have very blunt abdominal injuries. Some have lacerating abdominal injuries with so much massive bleeding. Some have some very bad fractures, right? Some have certain other injuries that we are going to assess. Some have been taken to the theater. It is after that assessment that we will now determine the extent of the injury.
Meanwhile, the Kaduna State government says it will take responsibility for the treatment of the victims and all the logistics. Governor Obasani says an immediate investigation into the tragic incident is ongoing to avert a repeat. He has also dispatched top government officials to the area to assess the situation and revert on ways to lessen the pains of the families of the victims. Meanwhile, the Igabi community remains a hard-to-reach area that's inaccessible to journalists due to the previous activities of terrorists in the community that has also seen the military intensifying its bombings there. Nisi Gabriel, Arise News.
In the meantime, Nigeria's 14-year fight against insurgency has seen many innocent citizens become casualties of war, some through accidental bombings from the nation's air power. Arise News and security defense correspondent Ferdinand Duroha reports on the trend.
When nations invest in firepower, the intention is not to use it on innocent citizens. Sadly, on several occasions, this is the fate of many Nigerians who have become casualties. Ran, Duma, Shiroro, and Dansandao are some very popular places which have felt the air power of armed forces of Nigeria through accidental airstrikes. As we add Tudumbiri in Kaduna State to the list, research shows that there have been more than 12 accidental airstrikes by the Nigerian military on communities since the widely publicized case of Ran in 2017. Unlike Ran, Duma, Shiroro and Tudumbiri, where the military accepted responsibilities, apologized and promised to pay compensation, many other incidents were denied, underreported and compensations not paid. Also unfortunate is that in most situations, the exact number of casualties are often not known. Neither are findings from investigations made public. It is for this reason that the military and government have come under intense criticism due to its handling of accidental strikes. Some incidents have also been exploited by politicians to criticize the government of the day and even call for the sack or shake-up of the security architecture. However, analysts have commended the federal government and the military's approach to the Tudunbiri bombing. Unlike most cases, the military accepted responsibility early in the day and have sent a high-powered delegation consisting of the service chiefs and accompanied by the Minister of State for Defense to the community. The delegation made a formal apology to the community, commiserated with them, and promised a thorough investigation. According to Nigeria's Chief of Defense Staff, General Christopher Musa, accidents are inevitable in war. For a military involved in prolonged battle against terrorists, inadequate manpower and equipment to wage the war against insecurities across various fronts, mistakes are more likely to be made. As the community and families mourn their dead, the bombing in Tudunbiri must serve as a wake-up call to the federal government, the military and Nigerians that no one is safe until lasting peace returns to all theaters of war. Ferdinand Duroha, Arise News.
Welcome back.
All right, two important stories there, Adesua, and I think that those are very important, well put together news items, particularly the second one by Ferdinand, highlighting all the mishaps that Nigeria has recorded, and I think between 2017 and now, accidental, deaths, not the type of accidental discharges, but accidental that the police will always speak about, but accidental discharges, they will be, but on a larger scale. The last of this week that we witnessed in Kaduna is so sad, and of course, condolences again will be in order to the scores of people who died in Kaduna, and to the Kaduna state government, who is insisting that the army possibly knew a lot more than they are telling. What I think is important is to acknowledge the fact that the army, the Nigerian army, came out in good time this time around, to own up to their responsibility. They say that it's an error. It's without much evidence, it will be hard not to believe them. But when you have two major bombings almost at the same time, the second one killing a number of people who are trying to rescue people, it's sad. Almost 100 wounded. We do not even have the final figures of how many that we lost. 50, 60, 75. Somebody said in the clip that we do not know. We have had the security advisor to the president, Ribadu, saying that they commend the army for the fight against insurgency and terrorism. And at the same time, while they are sorry about what has happened, the army ought to be commended on a general note. I think that this sort of a thing is inevitable, like General Musa said, was quoted to have said. But the rate at which we've been recording this, bombing innocent lives is just not what is good enough.
Yeah, I do agree. I think that, in war, it is inevitable that these mistakes would happen, that they would occur. But I also think it's very disheartening that it is the people who suffer the most from the insecurity that are also the ones who would be victims to this accidental airstrikes. And drone warfare is something that we need to be very, very careful about.
Absolutely.
The amount of people who are killed by an accidental airstrike, it's definitely a cause for concern, I say. And I also think that I'm happy that the army has come out and they have accepted responsibility for this, but we need investigation.
Yes.
The public needs to know that this is being investigated, that the army is putting in measures to prevent future reoccurrence of such type of mistakes. So I definitely do think that the army has done the right thing.
Yeah.
They're sending the right signals by accepting responsibility, by sending representatives to the community. But we need more in terms of public trust. We need to see investigations. We need to know that this will not happen again and that this is not being taken lightly by the people in charge.
Absolutely. And two quick things for me. First will be the issue of compensation. It's been said before, sometimes there are the promises, but then it won't be delivered. I think it is important, like the Kaduna State government is insisting, that compensation has to be there. These are generally poor people, villagers, people who have been denied so many rights, have been issued. I think that compensation will be in order and in good time too. The other part will be the aspect of quality training. When the Tucano jets were being purchased and were being shipped to Nigeria, of course everybody was excited that they would be important in the fight against terror. But one key component of it is personnel training. And I think that's one area that the Nigerian Army would need to look at closely. What sort of human error led to this type of accidental airstrike? Maybe training is weak, maybe training is lacking, maybe retraining is needed. So I think that the Nigerian Army should take good note of that so that, like you said, let's guide against future recurrence of it.
Definitely.
All right, we'll proceed. Non-custodial sentencing remains one of the best alternatives to decongesting overpopulated prisons or correctional centers in Nigeria. Hence, the federal government's decision to embrace the new measure. Attorney General and Minister of Justice Lateef Fagbemi disclosed this in Abuja amid the rising cost of feeding prisoners in the country. Our Rice correspondent, Godfrey Eshomoge, has more.
The Administration of Criminal Justice Act, which placed a premium on sentencing offenders without having to go to prison in what's called non-custodial sentencing, has been on since the law came into effect in May 2015, but the provisions have hardly been fully implemented. The new measures, which include fines, community service, probation, a combination of probation and community service, and conditional or absolute discharge, have been hailed as being novel in the approach to decongesting prisons. But in reality, non-custodial sentencing doesn't seem fashionable among Nigerians, even as correctional centers or prisons remain overstretched, housing mainly awaiting trial inmates living in very poor conditions amidst the rising cost of feeding them. At this two-day workshop, the Attorney General says the federal government has set out guidelines to stipulate the requirements and procedure for imposing non-custodial sentencing for the purpose of preventing abuse. Fagbemi, who was represented at the event by a Justice Ministry official, says even though these are early days, there are already some positive developments since Nigeria embraced the new measure.
Today, we have seen countless cases where defendants are arrested for minor offenses and locked up in prisons, adding to the population of awaiting trial inmates. These offenders, remanded with hardened criminals, end up being initiated into a life of crime instead of being reformed. The use of non-custodial measure has facilitated reduction in our correctional facilities. It is our hope that the non-custodial measures and sentencing guidelines will be more operational and effectively implemented.
Among those present at the workshop are magistrates, judges, and staff of the Nigerian Correctional Services, with a number of issues including sentencing minors to adult prisons up for discussion.
Instead of serving the sentence in the prison yard, you now tell someone to sweep the court premises, or you go to the market square, sweep the market, so that it will not sound as a deterrent to others.
We have been given the power to reject underage inmates. So when such inmates are brought and we confirm that they are really below the age, we reject them, irrespective of what is written on the warrant. Because what they usually do is to put 19, 20, 22 years. But when you look at the offender, the accused, you find out that that age does not correlate.
Key among topics that we highlight the two-day workshop include that on strategies for implementing the FCT High Court custodial and non-custodial sentencing guidelines. Godfrey Eshomoge, Arise News.
All right, I mean, that's an important two-day conference regarding the administration of justice, and the issue in Nigeria and the issue of overcrowded prisons, if you recall. I think it was last week that we discussed a bit about what the CJN said and why, he felt it was necessary to advise people to basically stay away, from the courts if you can help it, or from crime. So I think that what the new Attorney General and the Minister of Justice, Lateef Fagbemi, is trying to do is to encourage what has been there since, I believe it was on the 14th of May 2015, just before President Jonathan left, when he signed a number of bills into law. And I think this particular bill was part of it, the non-custodial sentencing. You are guilty, but then you don't have to be put in a correctional center if it can be helped.
Yeah. I think something that's very important that was highlighted in that report is that majority of the prisoners in our system, in our custodial system, are actually awaiting trial. And a lot of them, I think it's about over 50,000 of the 81,000 prisoners we have in Nigerian custodial system are actually awaiting trial, which means they have not been found guilty of any crime by any court of law. And just this week, in front of our representatives, we found out that the amount budgeted for an inmate
is lower.
It's lower than the amount budgeted for the guard dogs.
I saw that too. Interesting, isn't it?
It is. So, if our systems are, even if our correctional system is overcrowded, inhumane, then what we're actually doing is that we're harming our society in the long run because people are actually not getting access to justice. So I think a non-custodial arrangement is the best way for us to actually have a more just, system. Like, even if we want to have punitive, but we have to think about rehabilitation. You have petty criminals being held in these conditions with hardened criminals. We're worse off for it as a society.
You're right. Certainly one of the key ways to look at in trying to decongest, the prisons, particularly as it concerns, as you said, those who are still awaiting, trial. The worry of many Nigerians will be that let's hope that it will not be abused. And let's hope that when it comes to big crimes, like corruption-related crimes, for example, people stealing billions, that you won't say because there's a non-custodial, sentencing. People will now say, oh yes, we have found him guilty, let him just sit down somewhere in Maitama and Asukuru or in Ikoyi, enjoy this loot. I think that reassurance to Nigerians that justice will not be perverse on account of this is essential so that people can key in. But I like the fact that the Attorney General, is now keen into a law passed by an administration that, because of election and politics, administration that was randomly derided, for not performing very well. But of course, we can see what has happened in about 8 years after. All right. In a major step towards boosting Nigeria's domestic refining capacity and attaining energy security, Dangote Petroleum Refinery and Petrochemicals Plant has purchased 1 million barrels of crude in readiness for production. The purchase of the Agbami crude grade was made from Shell International Trading and Shipping Company Limited, one of the largest trading companies in Nigeria. On Wednesday this week, the cargo consignment sailed to Dangote Refinery's single-point mooring, where it was discharged into the refinery's crude oil tanks. The initial 1 million barrels, which represent the first phase of the 6 million barrels of crude oil to be supplied to the petroleum refinery by a range of suppliers, is expected to sustain the initial 350,000 barrels per day to be processed by the facility. The next 4 cargoes are to be supplied by the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited in 2 to 3 weeks, with the final of the 6 cargoes to be supplied by ExxonMobil. In the meantime, a former emir of Kano and one-time governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Sanusi Lamido Sanusi, has called for what he described as a proper audit of the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited and declared that the president of Nigeria should not be the minister of petroleum. Sanusi made this known while delivering his remarks within the week at the Bank Directors Summit in Abuja. The former emir, who was CBN governor from June 2009 to January 2014, also noted that his insistence for the audit of the then NNPC was what cost him his job at the Apex Bank.
We cannot afford to continue producing the oil and not seeing the revenue. We are no longer paying subsidies. So where are the dollars? Before it was under recovery. Now we don't have under recovery. Where is the money? It was the issue I raised for which I was suspended. You can suspend me again. Okay? But it is an issue that this country must address. NNPC is the most opaque oil company in the world. When I was in the central bank for 15 years, they had not been audited. We paid 11 trillion naira in fuel subsidy. There's no accountability up to now. The National Assembly called NNPC to bring the documents. They refused. And by the way, let me advise that this idea of the president being petroleum minister is not a good idea. The last president was minister of petroleum for 8 years. When I was governor of Central Bank, we had a petroleum minister. So when I talked about NNPC, I could attack Dizani. Now nobody can talk about petroleum because 8 years, if you talk, you're attacking the president. We need that buffer. Somebody has to be there. A minister has to be there who is held accountable by Nigerians.
All right, two important, in a way related stories there, Adesua. For the first one, I think this is what the Yorubas will call Uju Agbamilade.
What does that mean? I'm not sure what that means.
We're right in the middle of it, you know, as far as the Dangote refinery is concerned. You know that the crude is coming from one of the most lucrative crude ports in Nigeria, Agbami. You know, Agbami in Yoruba means, you know, the deepest part of the sea. So when the Yorubas say Uju Agbamilade, it's, you know, it's a way to say that, you know,
in the thick of things.
In the thick of things, absolutely. So I think congratulations will be in order somehow for the Dangote refinery. And I can understand why many Nigerians, particularly in the media, are celebrating that thing. I'm not so sure when they said, oh, historic landmark. I think what will be historic for me will be when the first, you know, few set of, you know, rollout of the Dangote refinery itself, so that we know that the refinery has actually started working and that Nigerians can benefit. People have been waiting, and not just since 2017 when it actually started, but because of the fact that it's been more than 6 months that former President Buhari, you know, commissioned that place, and we thought that in a matter of weeks, you know, that everything will be ready. But of course, we can't, on account of the delay, ignore the significance of what the Dangote refinery portends. So, from moving the crude from Agbami, you know, to Lagos, and of course to the Dangote refinery, is an important development. What will be the icing on the cake will be hopefully the date that says it will be in January or in March when things will roll out. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt, you know. So it is important. My point, however, would be that yes, commendations to everybody. I mean, this is a huge investment and everything, but we shouldn't, on account of the fact that Dangote refinery is coming finally, we should therefore ignore the 4 state-owned refineries by Nigeria. I do not think that the whole point of this is to encourage monopoly. We shouldn't. I also don't think that the whole point of this is to say that because it's a private thing, even though NNPC, you know, holding it for Nigeria has 20% there, that we should forget about that which we own. Algeria didn't forget the 5 refineries that they own by the state, and they're working, you know, to maximum capacity. So we should learn from things like that while we are celebrating and being hopeful that yes, it looks like Dangote refinery finally is about to roar to life.
Well, I would say congratulations to everyone in the Dangote refinery family. I want to pick up on something you said. I definitely believe that the launch of the refinery by Buhari was premature. The commissioning was premature. Sometimes some political sentiments overpower the private, the readiness of the private sector, which is essentially also why we need to focus on our assets as a country. I want to go even further. I want to go back to what the former governor of Kaduna State said, Malam Nasir El-Rufai, last year, when he said that the government should actually not be in the oil and gas sector. And it ties into the second story with Sanusi giving us an alarm, sounding us an alarm on NNPC. The government being in the oil and gas sector, the government, even though we had the NNPC go from NNPC to now NNPC Limited due to the Petroleum Industry Act. At the crux of the matter is that our own refineries are not working, and I definitely believe a lot of it has to do with the political issues that are in this oil and gas space. So
when you say the political issues, you're referring to the Nigerian factor, aren't you?
I'm referring to the Nigerian factor. And when you have the Nigerian factor and the political factor, then that's why we have an issue where we're saying that the NNPC is very opaque. We do not know their
finances.
Yeah, their finances are opaque. And we don't, last year, I recall when Mam El-Rufai gave out his statement, he said that NNPC has not given 20,000 naira out to Nigeria, that they are not remitting even something as low as that. And it sounded extreme, but at the end of the day, the issue here is that it's not just that the president should not be Minister of Petroleum. The oil and gas sector needs, I believe, less government involvement.
I'm not so sure how that will work. I think that would be a tough call. When politicians, particularly those in the ilk of El-Rufai, say things that are not strictly within their area of competence, I'm very reluctant, to endorse what they say. If El-Rufai is commenting on security matters, or on power, or on oil and gas, where he's not an expert. I'm not very, I see only politics. But this is not about El-Rufai. This is about NNPC. This is about former Emir Sanusi. And I think that why his intervention appears important to me is that it's almost like the 10th anniversary of that letter that he wrote to former President Goodluck Jonathan in December of 2013, which of course, started his old, the old brouhaha that got him out of office. And you could hear him from the report, making reference to the fact that this was what kicked me out of the CBN. And you can kick me out again if you like, but I mean, it's a private citizen. There's hardly any CBN governor that will not have an encounter with the NNPC being the cash cow of Nigeria. A good chunk of what comes from NNPC ought to be domiciled, with the CBN. When the governor of the CBN doesn't see such money, there is bound to be clash. We saw that under Sanusi. We saw it under Emefiele too. He had a running battle with, the NNPC. I do not know, yes, opaque finances, but I do not know about, something has never happened. I think under Mele Kyari, at least let's be fair to him, it may not be the best thing that has happened to oil and gas in the world, but at least under his tenure, since 2020, NNPC has been producing, audited reports. At least, that credit ought to go to him. It is now left for those who are in charge of oversight, to ensure that what they claim to have made and to have spent or are spending, etc., tallies with what they are declaring. As to if a president should be or should not be the petroleum minister, Frankly speaking, while I agree with SLS, I do not think that the reason why it shouldn't be a president shouldn't be the oil minister is because Nigerians or the public won't be able to hold him accountable. Hold him accountable is the key word for me, not attack him, as he has said. Obasanjo was a petroleum minister. Yaradua was. Jonathan wasn't. Buhari was. Now President Tinubu, is. Hold them responsible. Hold them accountable. But as I said, I don't believe that they can be. If Buhari was petroleum minister and he claimed that he did very well then, why wouldn't he trust whoever he appoints as petroleum minister rather than be him being the president? If it's so important to you, why are you not the CBN governor? Why are you not the coordinating minister of the economy? If because you think that you just have to oversee things. So it is on that note that I appreciate the intervention by Sanusi, Lamido. I think such interventions once in a while are needed, particularly if we're able to remove, personal, vestiges of personal vendetta from what they are saying.
Yes, and I agree with you. One thing that he said that was very important is that even if we sold all the oil we had now, that we would not be a middle-income country. So, oil is important. It's the lubricant for economy.
Yeah.
But we need to focus on more things to lift our GDP up.
We do need.
So now moving on to the next story. The fourth Republican presidential debate opened and closed with deeply personal clashes as the four candidates on stage pressed their case to be the viable alternative to Donald Trump, the far and away frontrunner who again declined to participate. The debate took a new urgency as the candidates, former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley, former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, former Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, and entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy only have mere weeks to cobble together support before the first contest in Iowa.
He's the one who, as you just put it, is way ahead in the polls. And yet, I've got these three guys who are all seemingly to compete with, Voldemort, he who shall not be named. They don't want to talk about it. The fact is that when you go and you say the truth about somebody who is a dictator, a bully, who has taken shots at everybody, whether they've given him great service or not over time, who dares to disagree with him, then I understand why these three are timid to say anything about it. Maybe it's because they have future aspirations. Maybe those future aspirations are now, or maybe they're 4 years from now. But the fact of the matter is the truth needs to be told.
Our country is in chaos. We see it on the southern border. We see it on our streets in our cities. We see it on college campuses. We feel it with our economy, with inflation and with debt. And we feel it around the world with wars in Europe and within the Middle East. We have to stop the chaos, but you can't defeat Democrat chaos with Republican chaos. And that's what Donald Trump gives us. My approach is different. No drama, no vendettas, no whining.
We have an opportunity to do a next generation of leaders and really be able to move this country forward. We also need a president that can serve 2 terms. I don't think Donald Trump, I don't think he'd be able to get elected. The Democrats want him to be the nominee. We see that. They are going to turn the screws the minute, if he got the nomination,
but do you think he's mentally fit to be president?
I think we need to have somebody younger. I think when you get up to 80, I don't think it's a job for that.
Oh, I do not miss. I do not miss Donald Trump in the White House at all.
You don't?
No. That was my president for a minute, for a brief point in my life. I mean, he's not on stage and he's the topic of conversation.
Absolutely.
It's a bit like they're dancing. They feel like cheerleaders and he's the quarterback. I don't know if they're competing right now to maybe end up as his vice presidential running mate. Yeah, it really does look like it. There's not much going on that stage, which is a bit of a shame. I would have expected more from Chris Christie, but in the Trump administration, I think Chris Christie was beat down so much that now I don't think he's been able to recover his old glory days when he was the governor.
Okay. Well, I mean, just to quickly correct that, Ron DeSantis is still the governor of Florida.
Sorry,
not the former.
Yes.
And I will imagine that he probably ordinarily ought to be the front runner outside of Trump, whether Trump is on the stage or not. But somehow, once you project yourself as anti-Trump from, within the Republicans, you get beaten down, mainly. So I do not see a candidate in any of them. I doubt if there will be a vice presidential candidate in the event, of course, that Trump wins as expected. Maybe I would have taken them serious if I had seen a Pence there or a Mark Pompeo, who was the Secretary of State to Trump. But we do not know who Trump will choose as his running mate. But I think that he will be the candidate. Ron DeSantis has a point there, though, to say that, yes, the Democrats want him so that they can use the same old rhetoric of 4 years ago to say that he's not fit to be the president. But he will be the candidate, except, of course, the law comes heavy on him. Even if that happens, Trump will still be Trump because he has done something unimaginable, whether inside or outside of office. Is really an unusual guy, isn't he?
He definitely is. And one thing you say, I understand expecting Ron DeSantis to be more important on that field, but he made a lot of unforced errors in the past 2 years. The fight with Disney, very unnecessary, a huge distraction. No one can beat Trump when it comes to getting those Tea Party voters, those right-wing voters, getting that base that he has a very strong base. But one thing that I will say will work against the Democrats is Joe Biden is currently facing very low, his opinion polls are slipping on Joe Biden. So
Joe Biden and Kamala, even Kamala as vice president, but with his age, with his health, with the issues of his son, let's see how it goes. Let's see how it goes. But the Trump, Biden, next year, I hope that it won't be deja vu, repeating what happened, 4 years ago. But again, it will be interesting looking at the American politics.
Definitely.
All right, that's all on the week that was.